Welcome to Payback POV, where you'll enjoy short, dramatic stories full of betrayal, heartbreak, and unforgettable revenge. We hope you have a great time listening, and don't forget to hit subscribe so we can bring you even more exciting tales. Now, let's begin with today's story. My husband unplugged my life support to charge his mistress's phone. The intensive care unit was silent except for the steady beeping of machines. My chest rose and fell under the rhythm of the ventilator, until suddenly, the sound stopped. Through the haze, I realized the unthinkable. My husband had pulled out my ventilator plug, not because of an emergency, not because the machine had failed, but to charge his assistant's damn cell phone. My lungs burned as oxygen cut off. I tried to scream, but only a hoarse rattle escaped my throat. My trembling hand clawed weakly at the sheets, fighting for breath. Meanwhile, the two of them, Daniel Scott, my husband, first time mentioned with full name, and his secretary, Haley Adams, were crouched by the outlet, eyes glued to the glowing phone screen. "Dan," Haley whispered with a sly smile as the battery icon lit up, "I just downloaded a couple of those explicit videos. As your assistant, I should really help you relieve some stress, don't you think?" Then, like teenagers sneaking porn, they huddled together watching, their laughter and whispers filling the sterile ICU room. My vision blurred, my breaths came shallow. Death crept closer, and then the door burst open. Professor Richard Nolan, my attending physician, froze in the doorway. His face twisted in horror as he took in the sight. My unplugged ventilator, my gasping body, and the two of them giggling over a phone. "What the hell are you doing?" he thundered, voice shaking with rage. He knew if I died here, it wouldn't just be my life lost. Their lives, their reputations, their freedom, everything would collapse. Daniel never expected that the plug he pulled so casually could also pull the plug on his own future. Professor Nolan stormed forward, yanked the charger from Haley's hand, and rammed the ventilator plug back into the wall. Air rushed into my starved lungs. I choked, coughing violently, every breath stabbing like knives. Daniel didn't even look at me. Instead, he scowled at the doctor, annoyed. "Was that necessary?" he sneered. "I was just borrowing the outlet for a second. Nobody died." Then he slipped his arm protectively around Haley's shoulders, his tone turning sickeningly sweet. "Don't worry, Haley. Everything's fine now." My throat burned as I forced out a raspy whisper. "Daniel, do you really want me dead that badly?" Haley's big eyes shimmered with fake tears. She leaned closer, her voice soft, dripping with poison. "Mrs. Scott, you're being unfair. There's only one outlet in here." My phone was dying. Mr. Scott was worried he couldn't be reached. "It's not like you would actually die, just from a minute without oxygen, right?" She fluttered her lashes, feigning innocence. "Honestly, you're exaggerating." Daniel bristled, instantly springing to her defense. "Victoria, you hear that? Haley's so considerate. Unlike you always dramatizing everything with life and death. God, you're such bad luck." He jabbed a finger toward me, his voice sharp. "Besides, I was the one who pulled the plug. What does this have to do with her? Haley was just trying to help me. And look at you, you're still alive, aren't you? Who exactly are you putting on this weak little act for?" Tears blurred my vision, but fury kept me upright. "Help you," I croaked. "Then explain why the two of you were crouched down, eyes glued to those videos, while I was suffocating right behind you. Was that work too?" For the first time, Daniel's mask cracked, his eyes darted, avoiding mine. But Haley only laughed low, smug, taunting. She tilted her head, resting it against his shoulder. "Wow, Mrs. Scott, even with half your lungs failing, you still notice everything, huh?" She giggled, her voice dripping with mockery. "I was just helping Mr. Scott relax. He's been under so much pressure. And let's be honest, someone hasn't exactly been able to satisfy him lately. So as his assistant, I figured I'd lighten his load. That's what loyal employees do, right?" Professor Nolan slammed a file down on the counter with a crack that echoed through the room. His face had gone pale with fury. "This is an ICU, a place to save lives. And you both of you are treating it like a motel lounge." Daniel's face darkened, but he still tried to brush it off. "Mind your own business, doctor, this is a family matter. Haley was just joking around. Don't be so uptight." And in that moment, staring at the man who was supposed to be my husband, I finally understood. My life meant nothing to him. Not compared to her fake pouts. Not compared to a handful of dirty videos on her phone. I closed my eyes, too exhausted to fight, and lifted a trembling hand. I waved them both away, the last shred of dignity I could cling to. The next morning, the door creaked open. This time Daniel wasn't with her. Haley Adams strolled in alone, her heels clicking against the sterile floor, her expression smug and unrestrained. Gone was the fragile act from yesterday. She leaned over my bed, her eyes sharp and mocking. "Victoria Scott," she sneered, "can you stop pretending to be so fragile? It was just a little allergic reaction. You're awake. Your hands and feet are working. Why are you still hogging a spot in the ICU?" Her voice rose with every word, sharper, nastier. "You know how much this room costs. Tens of thousands of dollars a day. Daniel is paying for all of it. Don't you feel the least bit guilty?" She jabbed her manicured finger toward my face. "You're nothing but a leech. Sitting here burning through his money, while doing nothing useful. The sooner you check out, the better. At least you won't keep draining his bank account." My hands shook with rage. I snatched my phone from the nightstand and dialed Daniel. "Daniel," I demanded, my voice hoarse but firm, "are you really telling me to leave the ICU today?" For a moment, silence. Then his cold voice crackled down the line. "I'm busy right now. Haley said you're fine, so there's no need to waste more money in intensive care. Be practical. Save the expenses. Once you're discharged, I'll come home tonight to take care of you." I laughed, a bitter broken sound. "Take care of me? Last night you nearly killed me by unplugging my ventilator, and now you expect me to believe you'll play the doting husband?" Before he could reply, I slammed the call shut. Turning back to Haley, my voice dropped to ice. "You don't get to lecture me about my marriage. Get out, or I'll call security right now." Her painted lips twisted into a snarl, but she didn't move. "You think you can scare me?" She spat. "You're nothing but a washed-up housewife. What authority do you think you have?" I raised my voice, shouting hoarsely toward the hallway. "Security." Within moments, a hospital guard rushed in. Relief flickered, until I saw Haley's triumphant smile. She ran to him, clinging to his arm like a damsel in distress. "Cousin, she's bullying me again." My stomach dropped. Of course, the guard was her cousin. "Remember last time someone caused trouble here?" Haley cooed sweetly. "Didn't you use that taser baton to teach him a lesson? Do the same to her. Show her who's in charge in this hospital." The floor was eerily empty, the nurses busy, the doctors in meetings. No one else around to stop this. I forced myself upright, my body trembling, but my voice cut sharp. "Don't you dare touch me. I am Victoria Scott, a major shareholder of this hospital. If you lay a hand on me, tomorrow you'll be out of a job." Haley laughed so hard she nearly cried. "Shareholder, please. You're a stay-at-home wife, living off my boss. Nobody would hire you to wash dishes, let alone call you a chairwoman." What a joke. The guard's face hardened, his taser baton crackling with electricity. "I've never heard of any chairwoman, Scott. The only boss here is our head of security. You humiliated my cousin, and now you're running your mouth. Today, you'll learn what electricity tastes like." He lunged. A searing shock ripped through me, pain exploding in every nerve. My body convulsed, vision blackened, and I collapsed. The last thing I heard was Haley's triumphant laugh, echoing in my skull. A nurse's voice pierced the fog. "You're awake." I forced myself upright, my body still trembling from the taser's aftershocks. The first thing I did was call the police. The door flew open. Daniel Scott burst in, dragging Haley Adams by the arm. She clung to him, eyes brimming with crocodile tears, her whole body shaking as though she were the victim. "Victoria," Daniel said quickly, "Haley already told me everything. She's young, she doesn't know better. Her cousin regrets what he did. You don't need to call the cops. Don't know better." I rasped, my throat raw. "She ordered her cousin to shock me with a taser until I blacked out. That's not innocence, that's attempted murder. Do you expect me to sit quietly and wait until the next time she tries to finish the job?" Haley ducked behind him, but I caught the sly grin tugging at her lips. Daniel's face darkened. His voice chilled. "Victoria, can't you be a little more forgiving? Haley already said she won't do it again. Why do you have to push her into a corner?" I stared at him, stunned. Forgiving? I was the one electrocuted unconscious. I was the one in the ER. And you're lecturing me about forgiveness. He snapped back, his patience thin. Enough. I work myself to death every day, to keep this family afloat. You don't have a job, you've never had one. Now you're in here wasting money, stirring up drama. Do you ever think about the pressure I'm under? I let out a bitter laugh. The day you begged me to quit my job and focus on having children, you promised to provide. Now you call me a leech. I leaned forward, eyes burning into his. Don't forget, Daniel, the house you live in, the car you drive, even the position you have at your company. All came from my father's money and connections. Without me, you'd still be a broke dropout flipping burgers. His face flushed an ugly shade. He lashed out, spitting words like knives. Your dad's company went bankrupt. You think you're still some heiress. Do you know how much this ICU costs per day? I'm the one carrying everything now. You can't possibly understand how exhausting it is. He raked a hand through his hair, his voice rising, almost frantic. Haley helps me. She entertains clients when I can't. She drinks with them, goes the extra mile. I've closed major deals because of her. Why can't you see she's doing it for us? And then he dropped the bomb. If you keep clinging to this jealousy, if you can't let go of Haley and her cousin, then we should just get a divorce. The words hit me harder than the taser. So this was what I meant to him. Years of marriage, everything I'd sacrificed, all dismissed with two careless words. Get divorced. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. Fine, I said coldly. Whoever refuses divorce, may they be the one cursed to lose everything. His eyes widened. He had expected begging, tears, submission. Instead, I gave him nothing but the chill of a dead heart. And right there, I made up my mind. If Daniel Scott wanted to throw me away for Haley Adams, then I would burn down his entire world. When the room quieted, I sat very still and watched them. Daniel and Haley trade whispers like conspirators. The sight of him bulging with self-righteousness, the way Haley leaned into him, as if claiming territory, stoked something in me that wasn't sorrow anymore. It was the cold, pragmatic recognition that I had been treated as expendable. They thought I was a broken woman with nothing left to lose. They were wrong. No one knows better than a person who's been dismissed what a quiet, efficient comeback looks like. While Daniel thought only of outlets and clients, I thought of ledgers, contracts, and boardroom favors. I thought of names and numbers that moved entire companies. My thumb hovered over my phone. I opened my contacts and tapped the name I'd kept only for emergencies. Thomas Sterling, my father. The man the city called a titan. The man who had built Sterling Enterprises from nothing, and for decades, had been the invisible engine behind every handshake that mattered in Harbor City. I typed, cold and fast. Dad, I want a divorce, and I'm coming home to take over Sterling. Then I opened another conversation, not with my father, but with a client who mattered far more to Daniel in that moment. Elliot Lamar, CEO of Lamar Industries, the single account that kept Vance Industries afloat. My fingers flew. Elliot, stop all deals with Vance immediately. Effective now. No pomp, no preface. Professional, final. My fingers hit send. I felt nothing. It was as if the last of the fear had been peeled off me, and something hard and clear had taken its place. Daniel didn't know Sterling's web yet. He didn't know how entwined my family's empire was with the city's supply chains, distribution lines, and most importantly its buyers. A single call from Sterling to Lamar could freeze orders, dry up cash flow, and turn a growing company into an insolvent shell within weeks. He also didn't know I owned the hospital's surveillance system. I had been a silent partner in a number of investments, including this private medical center. The hospital's security feeds were connected to a central system I controlled, and I had the receipts, the ledgers, and people who answered to me. The proof that had kept me alive in the ICU footage of Daniel and Haley in the doorway. The unplugged ventilator was sitting on a USB I'd had my lawyer prepare the night before, tucked away in my bag. I had anticipated the need to document everything. Tell him it's a misunderstanding. Haley's smug smile vanished. She clutched at Daniel's sleeve. For the first time she looked small. And then I did something I hadn't planned on announcing yet. I opened my hospital phone and typed a message to the attending manager, the man who had been arrogant and dismissive, Ryan Lee, head of hospital operations. I wrote, please escort Mr. Scott and Miss Adams from the room. I will have the executive team arrive shortly. I had learned not to leave justice to chance. When Elliot's assistant called Daniel's line that afternoon, the color drained from his face. He stared at the phone as though it had betrayed him personally. Mr. Scott, I'm sorry. Mr. Lamar has instructed us to suspend all current purchase orders with Vance, effective immediately. He requested we notify you at once. Daniel's eyes went wild, searching for a lifeline. There must be a mistake, he blurted. Call him. The board asked us to ensure your safety. Daniel's jaw dropped. Haley's face went a deathly pale. That wasn't the result of any oxygen shortage. Daniel tried to speak, to reclaim the moment, to strut back into dominance, but the script had changed. He was a player who'd been removed from the set. How? He stammered. I leaned back against the pillows, and, for the first time since the ventilator had been ripped from my side, felt real air in my lungs without pain. No exceptions. Within minutes, the door opened again, this time not to the petty flinch of Daniel and Haley, but to the cold precision of a team in black suits. Two broad-shouldered men entered, moving with the authority of corporate security, flanking Ryan Lee. They looked like hired bodyguards from a merger meeting, not hospital orderlies. Victoria Sterling, the lead man said, bowing his head slightly. We apologize for the delay. I said slowly, each syllable deliberate. Daniel, you assumed I was helpless. You assumed that pulling my plug would be the worst thing. You were wrong. You underestimated where I came from and what I know. I am Victoria Sterling, daughter of Thomas Sterling, heiress to Sterling Enterprises. And you, my dear, have just watched the life raft you clung to get pulled from under you. A look of disbelief stretched across his face, then curdled into something like panic. He made a grab from my hand. A performative plea. Vicky, please, don't do this. I'll fix it. I swear I'll fix it. Don't bring your father into this. I pulled my hand away, tired of being touched by false contrition. You pulled the plug on my life for a phone, I said. You handed your fate to people you never should have trusted. Good luck fixing that. Outside the ICU, the phones began to ring non-stop. My message to Elliot had been received and acted upon. Orders were frozen. Credit lines flagged. Procurement halted. In the span of a day, Vance Industries' pipeline had gone from humming to jammed, a slow, devastating choke. Daniel and Haley tried to bargain, to beg, to cast blame. They accused each other in front of the security men, and each accusation fell flat as the facts. The surveillance footage, the wire transfers, the hotel receipts began to align like blocks in a collapsing tower. It was not revenge born of selfish cruelty. It was calculated, surgical. They had given me fuel when they thought they were extinguishing me. I used it, as the reality of what I had set in motion settled over the room. Daniel's posture shrank. Haley's confident mask shattered. Even the head nurse who'd looked away couldn't meet my eyes. That night I sent one more message to my father, to my lawyer, to a select few board members at Sterling Enterprises. The text was simple. I'm coming home to take Sterling. The once cocky vice president Daniel Scott was suddenly just another man drowning in debt. But he didn't blame himself. Of course not. He blamed me. And so did Haley Adams. They came at me together, like two cornered rats, when the lawsuit was filed. I had pressed charges for attempted homicide. My lawyers moved with the precision of surgeons, methodical, efficient, merciless. The courtroom was packed the day the trial began. Reporters hovered at the back, sensing blood in the water. She begged me to do it because her phone was dying. She's the one who pressured me. They were rabid, snapping at each other, desperate to shift the blame. The judge raised a hand. Enough, plaintiff, do you have evidence? My attorney rose calmly, holding up a small black USB stick. Yes, Your Honor. Surveillance footage from the hospital hallway. The bailiff plugged it into the screen. Start the paperwork. And in the cold quiet that followed, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. The woman who had been told she was nothing more than a dependent was already in motion, reassembling the pieces of a life other people had tried to break. The collapse came faster than I even expected. Within a week, Vance Industries was choking. Orders frozen, warehouses stacked with unsold product, cash flow drying to a trickle. Daniel sat at the defense table in a wrinkled suit, his eyes bloodshot, his hands twitching on the wood. Haley looked even worse, her once polished curls limp, her lipstick faded, but when the judge called the case, their tongues sharpened like knives. Your Honor, Haley cried, voice trembling with rehearsed innocence. It was Daniel. He pulled the ventilator plug. I tried to stop him. That's a lie. Daniel roared, slamming his hand on the table. And then, for the entire courtroom to see, the truth unspooled, Haley checking her phone, frowning as it powered down, her poking her head into the hallway to make sure no one was watching, Daniel fumbling with a charger in the corridor. And then the moment the ventilator alarm flashed red inside my ICU room, as Daniel re-entered with Haley smirking by his side. The gasp that rippled through the courtroom was almost physical. Even the judge's expression flickered in disgust. Daniel's face drained of color. Haley's body went rigid, her lips trembling. This is fake," Daniel stammered. "This footage is edited." But the judge cut him off cold. "Mr. Scott, the hospital's entire security system is legally owned by the plaintiff. These are original, time-stamped files. Your objection is dismissed." Haley broke first. She collapsed into sobs, her voice cracking. "Mrs. Scott, Victoria, I'm sorry. I was jealous. I was stupid. You're not innocent either." I met his glare, my voice steady, unwavering. "The difference, Daniel, is that I didn't unplug my spouse's life support for a cell phone. That stain belongs to you and her." The judge's gavel struck. "Enough. This court finds the defendants, Daniel Scott and Haley Adams, guilty of reckless endangerment with intent to cause harm. Sentencing to follow." Haley collapsed against the table, wailing. And I, for the first time in years, I had my own name back. Not Mrs. Scott, not the dependent wife. Victoria Sterling, the woman he underestimated, the woman who survived, the woman who was just beginning to rise. It didn't take long for the dominoes to fall. After the court ruling, the contracts that kept Vance Industries afloat evaporated one by one. Clients withdrew, suppliers refused shipments, banks froze credit lines. "I thought you were just some housewife with no power. If I had known you were a Sterling," her words only dug the grave deeper. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Daniel tried to salvage his pride, sneering through clenched teeth. "Victoria, you think anyone will believe you didn't manipulate this? You think you can walk away squeaky clean, while we take the fall?" Daniel just sat frozen, as though every ounce of bravado had been siphoned out of him. When the hearing adjourned, the reporters swarmed. The words, "Sterling heiress," hit the headlines before I even left the courthouse. "Housewife no more. Heiress exposes husband who tried to kill her for mistress's phone. Corporate betrayal in Harbor City. Sterling name strikes back." Daniel had wanted a divorce. Now he had more than that. He had disgrace, bankruptcy, and the looming shadow of prison. Word spread through Harbor City like wildfire. Daniel Scott was toxic business. By month's end, Vance filed for bankruptcy. Daniel's polished suits were replaced with crumpled shirts. His sleek Mercedes was repossessed. His penthouse condo, the one he loved to flaunt as ours, was seized by the bank. All that was left of the Vice President Scott image was a broken man drinking himself sick in a dingy rental, and Haley. She held out for a week before bailing. Then her new sponsor ordered his bodyguards to drag Daniel out by the collar and beat him until he couldn't stand. Daniel lay on the sidewalk, his face swollen, his ribs bruised. Haley didn't even glance back as she stepped into a chauffeured car. That was the night, I heard later, when Daniel finally broke. Meanwhile, my world had shifted in the opposite direction. For years, I had been dismissed as a housewife. But the moment I walked back into Sterling Enterprises, everything fell into place. The boardroom that once saw me as Thomas Sterling's daughter, now saw me as something else. The woman who had turned personal betrayal into a corporate coup. The woman who had saved Sterling's future by dismantling her husband's company before it could leech more resources. I worked day and night with the executive team, revising strategy, negotiating expansions, cementing Sterling's dominance in Harbor City. Daniel and Haley had thought they were unplugging my life. In reality, they had jump-started something far greater. 3 years later, Harbor City had nearly forgotten the name Daniel Scott. But they had not forgotten mine. Victoria Sterling was everywhere, on the covers of business magazines, in conference panels, in headlines about Sterling Enterprises' expansion across the country. She had no degree, no skills, only a fading face and a reputation scorched by scandal. No company in the city would touch her. She stormed out of Daniel's apartment one night and resurfaced, clinging to the arm of a bloated real estate developer with a wife at home. The last anyone saw of her, she was shopping with his credit card, flashing a diamond bracelet she hadn't earned. Daniel showed up at her door days later, reeking of whiskey, begging her not to leave him. She laughed in his face. Within 2 years, we weren't just the leader of the market, we were the market. Reporters stopped calling me the betrayed wife. They called me the comeback queen, the iron heiress, the woman who rebuilt Sterling with fire in her veins. And I wore those names proudly. Because the truth was, the old Victoria had died in that ICU, when the ventilator cord was pulled. The new one was born in that silence, gasping, fighting, clawing her way back, until she could breathe on her own again. I had gone from a housewife dismissed as dead weight, to the woman journalists called the Iron Heiress, who turned betrayal into empire. And while I rebuilt my empire, something else happened. Love, a word I once thought poisoned, returned. It was at an international tech summit in New York. I was seated beside Ethan Carter, a self-made CEO who had clawed his way up in the clean energy industry. He was tall, sharp-eyed, but when he spoke, there was no arrogance, just clarity, respect. He had nothing left, no job, no money, no reputation. The bankruptcy had bled him dry. His parents stopped answering his calls. Former colleagues crossed the street to avoid him. And Haley, she had discarded him long ago. Rumors said she was still dangling from the arm of her married benefactor, but even that life was cracking. A fight with his wife had exposed Haley's affair to the press. Overnight, her sponsor cut her off. She vanished from the city social scene, until whispers emerged that she was working in seedy nightclubs under a fake name. Her beauty fading fast under neon lights and cheap perfume. Sometimes Daniel tried to find her, drunk and bitter. One night, when he finally did, he saw her laughing on another man's lap. The sight broke whatever fragments of pride he had left. We tried to turn him away, but he refuses to leave. My heart went cold, even before I stepped toward the window. There he was, Daniel Scott. His hair was matted, his clothes torn, his face scarred from some long-forgotten street fight. He stood at the gate, clutching the bars, his body shaking. And when his eyes lifted to mine, it was not love, not even anger. It was a hollow, bottomless regret. He mouthed words I couldn't hear. Maybe forgive me, maybe help me, maybe nothing at all. Outside those gates, he remained only as a shadow, the ghost of a mistake I had buried long ago. If karma had been slow before, now it came with precision. The district attorney's office had been quietly building a case for months, pulling together every piece of evidence, financial records, hotel receipts, and most damning of all, the ICU surveillance footage showing Daniel Scott unplugging my ventilator. The charges were formalized: attempted homicide and reckless endangerment. We spoke after the panel, then over dinner, then again at a quiet rooftop bar, where the city lights stretched out like constellations. He didn't pity me for my past, nor idolize me for my last name. He simply saw me. With Ethan, there were no whispered lies, no phantom perfume on his collar, no shadows, only steady hands, a patient smile, and a willingness to let me set the pace. For the first time in years, I began to believe and trust again. Meanwhile, Daniel's world was rotting. By the time I heard of him again, he was living under a bridge, doing odd jobs, and occasionally begging outside the very hospital where he once ripped my ventilator plug from the wall. I never went to see him, not once. But fate is cruel in its sense of timing. On the night of my engagement to Ethan, as guests clinked glasses and chandeliers blazed, the butler hurried in, whispering nervously, "Miss Sterling, there's a vagrant outside insisting on seeing you." I turned away. Behind me, Ethan slipped his hand into mine, steady and warm. "Do you know him?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake. Once. The butler asked for my instruction. I gave it without hesitation. "Send him away. Tell him, I'm happy now. And I don't need him anymore." The doors closed. The music swelled. I walked back into the light, into the laughter, into the future that had nothing to do with Daniel Scott. "Liar. You begged me to charge your damn phone. Don't twist this on me." They clawed at each other like animals in a trap, their words overlapping, spittle flying. The judge banged the gavel for silence, his disgust plain. My lawyer rose calmly and handed over a flash drive. "Your Honor, we have direct video evidence." If I'd known, the judge cut her off, voice like steel. "Attempted murder does not depend on your victim's last name." Daniel's shoulders sagged, as if the weight of reality had finally crushed him. The verdict was swift. Haley Adams, 5 years in prison. Daniel Scott, 2 years. The reporters outside exploded with the headline, before the ink was dry. From mistress to inmate, the rise and fall of Harbor City's most hated pair. Haley was let out sobbing hysterically. screaming that she regretted everything. Daniel walked in silence, his head bowed, his face a ghost of the arrogant man who once mocked me in my own hospital room. I didn't stay to watch them go. For me, it was over. The law would handle them now. Instead, I returned to my office at Sterling Enterprises. The courtroom was fuller this time, reporters practically buzzing. Everyone wanted to witness the final collapse of the couple, who had become Harbor City's cautionary tale. Haley Adams looked almost unrecognizable when the guards let her in. Her once perfect makeup was gone, her hair stringy, her eyes wild. She tried to paint herself as a victim, pointing a shaking finger at Daniel. "It was him, Your Honor. He pulled the plug. He made me cover for him." Daniel snarled, slamming the table. "This will end the debate." The lights dimmed. The footage rolled again. Daniel fumbling with the plug, Haley glancing around to make sure the coast was clear. Both of them crouched together while the ventilator alarm blared red. The courtroom gasped. Even the stenographer's fingers faltered. Haley collapsed in tears, wailing. I didn't know she was the Sterling heiress. The glass windows reflected the skyline, glittering with the life I had rebuilt. My father's chair at the head of the boardroom was mine now, not by inheritance but by battle. Reporters didn't just call me the Iron Heiress anymore. They called me something else. The woman who survived her own murder attempt and took back an empire. I carried the name like armor, because Daniel and Haley had tried to bury me in a hospital bed, and instead, I had risen from it, not just alive, but untouchable. The years that followed were nothing short of transformation. Sterling Enterprises, under my leadership, soared beyond even my father's ambitions. We weren't just a powerhouse in Harbor City, we expanded coast to coast, branching into tech, real estate, and clean energy. Everywhere I went, people no longer whispered "Poor Mrs. Scott." They spoke with respect. Victoria Sterling, the woman who turned betrayal into legend. Their names stopped trending. Their faces disappeared from feeds. They were no longer scandals, no longer threats, just cautionary tales told in whispers. And me, I didn't just survive them. I outlived them, outshone them, outlasted them. The night I stood on the balcony of my estate, the city lights glittering below, Ethan's arm warm around my waist, I felt the final chapter close. I thought back to that ICU room, the hiss of the ventilator, the sudden silence, the suffocating dark. At home, I had something even more precious. With Ethan Carter, I built a life rooted not in dependency or fear, but in trust. He never tried to dim me or bind me. Instead, he stood beside me, proud to let me shine. For the first time, I knew what love was supposed to feel like. Daniel Scott never reappeared in any meaningful way. Rumor said he drifted from shelter to shelter, sometimes lurking outside Sterling's headquarters, too ashamed to step inside, too broken to rebuild. Once, a tabloid photographer caught him scavenging trash cans, unshaven and wild-eyed. The headline read, "From executive suite to dumpster." The final fall of Daniel Scott, Haley Adams. Her fate was worse. After her release from prison, no one would touch her. With her face scarred and her reputation ruined, she slipped into obscurity. Last I heard, she was using a different name, hustling in the shadows of a distant city. A ghost of the woman who once smirked as I suffocated. The moment Daniel and Haley thought they had written my ending. But that silence had been my rebirth. Because when they pulled the plug on my life, they unknowingly sparked the empire that would bury them. And as the night air swept my hair back, I whispered, not for them, but for myself. I am Victoria Sterling. I am untouchable.
Every scandal's a spark, every heartbreak's a flame. Unforgettable endings, you remember the name. We'll take you through love, through the lies they weave. Every twist, every turn, you just won't believe. This is Payback POV.
Join us for more unforgettable stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and sweet revenge.
This is Payback POV, POV, where the tales hit hard like destiny. Stay a while, let the stories flow. Don't forget to like and hit subscribe below.
Every scandal's a spark, every heartbreak's a flame. Unforgettable endings, you remember the name. We'll take you through love, through the lies they weave. Every twist, every turn, you just won't believe.
This is Payback POV, revenge and rhythm, pure energy. Thanks for listening, come back soon. We'll drop new tales neath the blood red moon.
Thanks for tuning into Payback POV. Hit follow, hit subscribe, and join us for more unforgettable stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and sweet revenge.